Hi everyone, my name is Ibuk Iyoda, and I'm here to discuss the database component of this project. The reason why we chose to use Google Cloud Platform rather than any other cloud cloud application was because it integrated well with Android Studio. We also were able to receive free credits, so we didn't have to use our credit card, so that was a plus. I would show you the tables that we planned on integrating with this project. So we initially, before the project really kicked off, we planned to have multiple features that incorporated using the facility table and the book table. So we wanted the app to be able to use a QR code to borrow books and use a QR code to get into buildings. But with time, we're not able to perform this, and we're only able to perform one feature, which was the ability to purchase meals with a QR code. We also needed the users table to create users so that users could interact with our application. I will start off with the user table. So for each record, I ensured that the user ID had was a primary key, and also I ensured that the banner ID column had a unique constraint because student each student has a unique banner ID. So that could also be the primary key as well, but I decided just the user ID should be the primary key. As you can see, each record contains a first name, a last name, email address, and a password. And the application uses the banner ID and the password to log into the application. And so when a request is sent out from the application to the server upon authentication, the server responds and sends back to the application the first name, the last name, and the email address of the authenticated user. And since we only have one feature, which is the purchasing of meals, we it also calls this table select star meals. It also calls the meals table. As you can see, the meals only has two columns. I decided to use the banner ID. Uh, I decided to use the banner ID as the primary key because it would be because using the banner ID as the primary key, we would be able to create a natural join with the users just for easier querying. And as you can see, the banner ID for each student has a specific meal count. So if when a meal count when a meal is purchased, the meal count for that associated banner ID decrements, and if nothing was purchased, then it increments back. When new user is created, a new record is inserted into the meals table, and as for default, we use 10 meals per created user. This is everything associated with the database. If you have any questions, please let us know at the end of the presentation. Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Ibuk Iyoda. I will be talking about the database portion and also the UML diagrams. Starting off with the UML diagrams, this is the activity diagram for the login feature of the application. It kicks off by the student opening the app. When they do open the app, they're given the choice of signing up or signing in. When they do sign up, they input their credentials, and the application checks the database to see if the credentials that the user chose are existed in the database. If it is, then it's not accurate and it displays an error message, and the student has to try again. But if it's unique, then it creates the user. when they decide to sign in instead, the student should inputs their credentials, and it checks the database to see if it's accurate. If it is accurate, then it authorizes the user to log in. But if it isn't, then it displays an error message. Um, Next is the class diagram. So the class diagram is pretty simple because we didn't have enough time to include other features of the project due to time. So each user has a one-to-one relationship with an account, and a user could be authorized by the use of the QR code, which is under the authorization class. An account makes a transaction which the transaction uses the meal class. So the transaction basically the transaction would be only used during the meal feature, which is purchasing meals. Last is the sequence diagram. So how it works is the student requests requests access towards the app. If they if they're authorized and they get into the app, then they could request to purchase a meal. If they do request to purchase a meal, it sends a request to the server. The server retrieves the student's information from the database. Um, if they're allowed to, if they're allowed to, excuse me, if they are authorized, then the database send would send that request back to the front end. So dependent on if they were authorized, then the database would send a token and also the first name, last name, and email address back to the server, which the server sends back to the phone. And if it sends all this information, then granted the user is authorized and it displays a QR code. If it doesn't, if they're not authorized, then it sends the server sends back to the application an error message, and a QR code will not be displayed, but an error message would be displayed. This is it for the UML section.